Those who undergo the path of initiation and succeed, we call adepts. And what is an adept but one who is skilled at something? In this area of work or domain, we mean one who is skilled in the esoteric arts and sciences. Well, you all knew that, right? That didn't really explain anything. And what that means is they have a theoretical and practical knowledge of the relationship between energy, consciousness, and matter. Theoretical in the sense that there's book learning and ideas. Practical in the sense of their own mind, their own lives. You are the laboratory. You are both the scientist, the experiment. You're the experiment, the experimenter, and the the object and matter of experimentation. You're all of it. All wrapped up into one. It is your life. So why does any of this matter? Why do we desire an understanding between energy, consciousness, and matter? Well, because it all comes down to realizing our desires. You wouldn't be here if there wasn't something which you desire to do. Now, I don't mean would like to do or have an aspiration to do, but something that you really, really, really want to do. And it can be anything. It can be a realization, it can be an activity, it can be something. But there's something you are after to which you feel a certain amount of opposition to. And you want to overcome that opposition. You want to realize your desires and what you want. And that's okay. The problem is, when we think of adepts and spiritually awakened people, we think of it as something being very, very detached from physical life and physical reality. Occasionally we will think of people who are in that self-realized way, that perfect way, but they seem to be still almost unattainable. Yeah. You know what that is, right? This is what we often think of when we think of adepts and spiritual realization. That's Saint Germain, by the way. So much myth has grown up around him, it's almost impossible to tell what's real from what's not. But that's part of it. All these myths grow up, and this is what we think of. We create an ideal around a myth, yeah? And then act as if that's what we should be doing. And that's what we think of, but what we really want is that. That's what we're really after. And that's okay too. And occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll meet someone who's somewhere in between. Somewhere in between. Who is further down the road than you, but achievable. Who can both inspire and direct, but also you get a sense of how this is done. And maybe that's what you can hope for too. I think he did okay. The old guy, that is. So what are the four aims of life? The four domains of Jupiter. Health, which we can attribute to air. Wealth, which we can look at as earth. Happiness, which we can look at as water. And wisdom, which we can look at as fire, these elements. And they all take place within the domain of space, or acacia, or spirit. And within us. All of these things exist within us, as you know from previous classes or previous lessons. Okay? That's why what we do ritually can have an effect on us internally, and what we do internally through meditation and visualization can have an effect on us physically and externally, through the chain of relationship. But today we're going to focus primarily on how these things relate to the sphere of Hesed. And we really need to understand that Hesed has to do with the big picture. It's pretty high on the tree. You know, Jupiter's pretty high up there. He's always looking at the big picture. Even when he's getting down and dirty and turning himself into a swan, there's always the big picture at work. When we think of the big picture, again, there's a tendency to over-philosophize. We're constantly asking ourselves, what is the will of God? What does God want me to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Maybe we should start there first. What do you want to do? Short term. Microcosm. What is it you want to do in your life? What is it you want to do with your life? Your life big picture and your life small picture right now, the next 3 months, the next 6 months. What is it you want to accomplish? That's it. It's all okay. So for today, giving you an overview, we're going to look at what we call order out of chaos or life mapping. We're going to look at pathworking as tools because there's many paths that lead to that sphere. We're also going to look at diagnosing and correcting our energetic imbalances because if we don't do that, well, they're just going to expand, until they pop. So we want to avoid that. We're going to look at the value of planetary hours and also the energy of a place, the energetic nature of a place. Because it all comes down to terra firma for us, doesn't it? We're always looking at right here. Now, I remember many years ago when I was somewhat young and naive, I met Peter Rosh-Jacobins, and he gave me a copy of one of his books. And he wrote inside of it that wonderful phrase, cherchez la femme, look for the woman. Now, it's very interesting because that is often meant as a derogatory term, meaning that within French literature that if you want to find the source of the problem, find the woman. And there may be truth to that, but he was also saying, look for the inspiration. I know for a few of you that the laundry really wouldn't be done if you didn't have to, if you weren't expecting company. But what we're saying here is, it's all about the energy. It's all about the Shakti. It's all about the Shekinah, the presence of deity, presence of God. This is what we're talking about in everything we do. It's all about the energy. Write that down. Write that in big letters. Put that where you see it every day. It's all about the Shakti. It's all about the energy. Because at the end of the day, we are all magi, whether we know it or not. And if we understand, and this is from Duality, if we understand that in the 10 worlds, or the spheres of the Tree of Life, energy is inversely proportional to density, we're able to understand the mechanisms of magic. As a result, we have two kinds of beings on this earth. Those who know the nature of thought and how to use it as a tool of power in whatever application. They are aware mages. That would be you guys, okay? Or anyone on this path, or any other path. Others who use thought without knowing its occult practices are unaware, meaning that there's no escaping the law. The good news is most people's thoughts are like fireflies, or mayflies. They just kind of disappear within a few moments of appearing. They're like soap bubbles that just kind of go off and then pop. And the reason is because they don't understand that their thoughts are energy. And that energy on one level is also matter on another, which we'll talk about. But they can never give it enough energy, meaning enough matter, to densify, solidify, and change direction. Think of a habit. Let alone think of a habit that has a chemical component to it, such as an addiction of some kind. Okay? It is very difficult to stop smoking. And it is particularly difficult if you don't have some kind of material support. Hence the patch. Because you got to wean yourself over time. But that alone is not sufficient. There has to be an emotional desire. A desire to say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not good for me. And I'm going to back off. right? That's it. But you have a crutch to help you, a support. Just like you use a ladder to reach a light bulb or whatever else, you need a tool. And that's what occultism is. All ritual, all visualizations, all meditations are tools to help us move in a direction to achieve something. Most people, they don't have that. But the rules still apply. This is ultimately about something which is very important called the power of the word. Write this down. Because the word is energy expressed in sound. It is a pattern that will manifest in our lives. Now, we talked to you about this in the course The Mind of Hermes, which the transcripts for that are completed and will probably get published maybe by the end of next month or so. Because all sound is direct and pure energy. It's uncontrived by intellectual filters or conventions. Someone doesn't have to use words or even use words clearly for you to understand the meaning of the sounds that they produce. Just think of a baby, right? You can tell just from the sounds of the baby what it's more or less conveying to you. Sound works on a frequency and resonance that has a direct effect on our nervous system. All you have to do is sit next to the speaker to know that, right? You can feel it. It also works on our psychic centers in the same way. A sympathetic resonance is created. The nice thing about it is that resonance is created in a relaxed, or at least more pure, direct manner. And if I had to tell you what the entire mystery of this class is about, it is called the mystery of the word. Yes, it is concerned with the mystery of the word, and this mystery is simple. It says to be selective in your speech so that every word is a prayer or a mantra of sorts. As in a reality, it is an invocation, a direction of energy from one level to another. Whenever you're speaking, you're directing energy from inside, from abstract or invisible to now visible. Because once it's said, we know what's going on inside that 10 pounds of jello inside your brain, inside your skull there, right? We get it. But before then, it's a mystery. Now it's been said. And once we say, be careful, because once it's said, it can't be undone. They don't forget. What is the word? Word is energy constantly radiating from the formless to the world of form. Whether it be esoterically, as in the beginning was the word, or exoterically, as I just explained in terms of day-to-day communication. Divine names are the sound presence of this energy in its various manifestations on the journey to matter. People think of divine names or mantras as just sound, but they're not. They're the actual energetic presence of that quality. And you have to think of them that way. Otherwise, they're devoid of any real power. That's why blasphemy is such a problem, esoterically speaking. It's not because it's because you're taking the name of God in vain, whatever that name happens to be, means to use it carelessly, without concern or consideration for its potency or power. And if you're not careful about how you use divine names, then that potency or power isn't there for you if you should want it or need it. Or will less likely be there for you. You don't want to sound too definitive on that. So we have to cultivate a respect for the invocations, the prayers, the mantras, whatever it is that we're using. You have to really want that power present in your life when you say it. It's like I was talking to a fellow a couple nights ago. I said, "Oh, no, you didn't say it, did you?" Yeah, you'll laugh because you know what I'm talking about. He goes, "Oh, I did." I said, "Dude, if you don't mean it, don't say it." I don't even have to tell you what word I'm talking about. You all know he said, "I love you." Right?
What was going on when he said that?
Yeah,
It was either pre or post, but either way.
you're saying it doesn't count in some sense.
Yeah.
No takesy backsies.
He's no takesy backsies. That's the problem. If you don't mean it, don't say it.
Quote Mark Stavish, didn't you say just because you love it, it doesn't mean it's love?
That's right. As I tried to get him to understand. Her understanding of the word is a whole lot different than your understanding of the word. Okay? You were foolish.
Mark, now, what you're saying is, I guess, and I just do this because when we spoke before, is like if you read the Psalms
Yes,
and then you learn the words,
right.
is that basically what you're talking about too? Is when you learn those words and then you say the right psalm and you focus on that?
Right, because the psalm is more or less, we have the focus on it, we say it's correct because it's been cultivated over centuries for that application. Very often when you read those descriptions, you wonder, why is it this psalm and not another one? It has to do with some kind of Kabbalistic analysis and how they derive divine names from it, which I've never paid much attention to, so I don't even know the process. You know, I'm more of a technician on that end. I just take their word for it and use it. Which brings us back to faith, the belief, the confidence in it. So when you believe that this is going to work this way, it will, because there's a certain convention at work. Okay, there's a certain cultural convention. It's the same way when you say, as we talk about often, the example I give, automobile. When I say automobile or car, I think of one thing. You know, when I say, but you may think of another. Keith, I know he thinks of something completely different. He loves his Beamer.
Mark, I have an Audi now.
What?
I have an Audi now.
You have an Audi now. Oh, I'm sorry. How does it compare to the Beamer?
Better.
Is it better, really?
It's an S4.
Yeah.
It moves pretty good.
But it was the Porsche that scared you, right?
I had a Porsche many years ago. Yeah, I never.
You see, and we joke about it, but his idea of an automobile is very different than some of ours. Okay, and in a way I'm kind of jealously so. But you know, I would just want to drive it. I really wouldn't want to own it. But what did we see at the Alfa Romeo? Right?
Yeah,
It's an Alfa
I was checking
Romeo.
that out.
Yeah, at the airport. That's pretty cool. But you see, these are whole different ideas of auto. But the word is the same. So what do you mean by it? So you load a lot of information into these prayers, because even though the prayers may be used for similar purposes, your personal reason for doing it may be different from mine or from yours or anyone else's, but they have a certain similarity. So we load the prayer with our emotional desire. What is our desired outcome? What is it that we want from it? And that desire is the energy that we load into it. We call it the Shakti. That's the energy. Okay? Because this is all about energy. If you simply recited those prayers without any real emotional desire, just recited those psalms, they probably wouldn't do much for you. Because it's like getting in a car and turning it over, putting it in gear, into drive, or maybe neutral, but your foot isn't on the pedal. So if you even are in drive, it may kind of limp along. And if it's in neutral, it'll just sit there unless you're on a slope or something, or some other force comes to impact on you and move you. Your emotion is the moving force behind the efficacy of all ritual and prayer that you do. And behind that emotion is again something else that we'll talk about, very important, is confidence or faith. And there's a little bit of a difference between those two. Okay. Now, when I was putting this presentation together, I finished it up yesterday. I had about a third of it done. I honestly didn't expect it to be this long. And then I realized why. And I think this is why we've had so much opposition to the seminar and for people to getting here. While several paths will be discussed, and we're going to be looking at the 21st, the 22nd, and the 19th path in particular, that's the obvious. But the reality is, all of the work can be summarized in the 32nd path. The path between Yesod and Malkuth. Right. And later on it becomes kind of a Jupiterian solar influence, but it's Saturnian. Because we must always remember that work on one path does not exclude simultaneous, albeit unconscious work on one or more additional paths as a result of inner resonance. And ultimately in our physical world, everything will sooner or later channel through the 32nd path. That's the narrow end of the funnel. It must pass through there at some point. Okay. On this path, one makes a decision to conquer matter. This is from Duality. The future of the student depends on the conquering of this path, which is the most difficult of all. It requires that we have strength and courage, patience, ability to get vision, and acquire spiritual wisdom. Spiritual, I like to say, is we think of that wisdom, knowledge of our own mind, and how that then relates to others. I want that to be a fairly concrete definition because I don't like the words spirit and spiritual. They're vague. An ambiguity is some kind of deceit, some kind of deception.
I find it
Energetic, if we want to use it that way. And knowledge of the wisdom of energy. Wisdom about energy is another way to look at it. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I find it interesting is the four archangels on the Wheel of Fortune
Right.
card.
Yeah. These four elements, these four qualities, these four archangels, these four cherubim, these four enlightened nature of our own mind. It's again and again and again we come back to. So even if you were to stop right here at the end of this session, you'd really have everything you need to know. Meditate on those axioms we just gave you. You have to be honest about your own deficiencies so that you can fill them up. Learn, and we'll talk about this again today and tomorrow for those of you who are staying, on imbibing yourself with the nature of these energies as they descend from Yesod, or from the invisible, the energetic level, the unconscious level, and harmonize them with your own personal energies right here. This is the key to this path. Because you have to answer this question, and I asked this too in several of the books. I asked this in The Path of Alchemy. What would it mean if you had the Philosopher's Stone? How would your life change if you had this? What would the mastery of the material world mean to you? These folks who called me, I had the one guy call me, and he was very concerned about his mother. They've been having this paranormal phenomena for 7 years. For him, it's pretty much gone away, but she still experiences it. His friends were experiencing it. Other people were experiencing it in the house. And I said to him, well, one of the things we have to talk to her about is, what would your life be like when it's gone? It's amazing how long people hold on to this stuff. I've met people with 7, 8, 10, 12, 20 years of disruptive phenomena because they acclimate to it. It becomes an identity for them. They're special now. You've seen that with other people too. People whose lives it's complicated. Yeah. Who do we have to thank for that? The writers of Grey's Anatomy? Who started that nonsense? this kind of adolescent-y view. It's complicated. No, it's not. It's not complicated. It's not. But if you want it to be, it will be. And if you like the drama, which is what that implies, then you get it. And what's the beauty of drama? It keeps you entangled in the moment. You're not responsible for your life. You don't have to make decisions. Everything's being done to and for you. Drama's great for that. And suddenly you're important. But important about what? Nothing, because nothing is really being accomplished. It's just chaos for its own sake. Now what I suggest you do is to look at the Tarot by Mooney Sadhu and the Tarot of the Magicians by Oswald Wirth. Take a look at their ideas around the cards, because they are different from what you see in the typical Waite, Crowley, Golden Dawn stuff. Different understanding. They will give you some good points in these books for your meditation and even ritual practice. But again, these points are ideas, they're indicators. It's really up to you to find a way at how you're going to apply it in your life. Okay. Because ultimately here what we're talking about is the great work. How do your individual ideas and aspirations, your goals, how do they fit into the great work or your becoming? So if you want to write a book, you want to learn to play an instrument, you want to become good at martial arts, you want to become good at medicine, how does this fit into your personal expression? See, we're not taking the great work and putting it out there as an abstraction, but saying as a part of your day-to-day existence. How does this work? How are you bringing about in yourself the ideal of creation to make your microcosm conform to the harmony of the macrocosm? What does that mean? Again, your individual life with, we'll say, macrocosm, we'll say nature. Again, I'm a little hesitant because we often think of the macrocosm as being the will of the macrocosm. What is the will of the universe? What is the will of God? I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows, because I don't think it has a will in the same sense that we think of will. I think the will of the macrocosm is simply the expression of these all possibilities and just the expression of everything that is possible. To be without limit. I don't think it's much more complex than that. And in doing so, there is a realization of the nature of our own being, our own mind. So if everything you do is in some way helping you to better understand yourself, then you're being more in harmony with that goal. And of course, it's not you alone that is to realize this, but it's other people who are trying to realize it too. So how do you help them on the path to the best of your ability? And I'm not meaning some messianic vision here, but how do you just reach out and help each other as we do in this room? The card often given to the 32nd path is that of the world. It's a great card. And as we can see, it has to do with completion, deification. It has a strong Jupiter solar influence in this domain. Complete success, achievement, integrity, ecstasy. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? That's great stuff. Saturn, man. He's tough on the words, isn't he? The allness is your essential privilege. Your consciousness or mind translucent and expanded to infinity, meaning without limit. It's whole. It's truth. We say truth is immovable in its perfection. That has a bit to do with the notion of eternity and duality. Duality is always movement. Eternity we think of as stillness. Okay? That's why we're always trying to still our mind in meditation, so we can get glimpses of that eternity, of that unity. And then he says, do you try and conceive of yourself, a mental conception of that which is inconceivable? That's really what we're always trying to do with a lot of this work. We're trying to mentally construct an idea as to what would it be like to be blank. What is inconceivable? And we say that is eternity. This conception can be difficult as our minds continually create, but eternity is always creating too. We become lost in the creations of our minds. How often haven't you found yourself thinking about something, just a thought, and then you follow it down, and suddenly, seconds, minutes, time goes by, and it's like, how did I get there? Jerry, how did you go to doom so quickly? Jerry had himself buried and in the ground, resurrected, and in his next incarnation in about what, 30 seconds?
About a vapor man.
That's great. And we've all been there. We've all done it. And, I often have some people I have to say, ease up on the doom. Okay. Put a brake on that. The pedal on the left. Ease up. We become lost in the creations of our own mind. And isn't that the story of the fall? Isn't that the story of Sophia, right? Lost in creation. Yeah. We lose sight and have only a vague memory of the eternal, of unity. And when that happens, we have or experience the initiation of the nadir. We begin the path of return. Path of return. Suddenly you realize, something hit, the dog barks, the horn on the car goes outside, and suddenly you realize you're not 12 years old again, and that incident on the playground, wasn't really happening. And no matter how many times you go through it in your head, you can't change it. But for the 5 seconds, 10 seconds, minute and a half that you're ruminating over it, it's very, very real. Right? And what's it doing as you're going through that? It's creating physiological, chemical, and nervous responses that keep habituating you to those patterns. And it's like ruminating over thoughts. Now, how many times, if I only said this, I wanted to say this when I was there, but I didn't. In your head, you think, what would you do different if? How much of our lives are wasted in those fantasies, those delusions? The reality is you just let them go and move on. That's why we're about order out of chaos. To bring order out of the chaos, which is our lives, the expressions of our own mind. We can then begin to align our little order or microcosm with the cosmic order or macrocosm. It's not always as big a philosophical idea as we'd like to think it to be, and that's what we'll talk about today. How, when you have a goal, to set it up so that the general energy of life is more likely to be behind it and to help support it and bring it into being. And we talk about that in Freemasonry. We talk about that as building the Temple of Solomon. And one of the things we like to talk about Freemasonry, what's the phrase that we use to describe it as? We call it what? We call it the craft. Oh, that's the wrong craft. Okay. Okay. The craft of building the Temple of Solomon. But in building that Temple of Solomon, it's all about what? The Shakti, the energy. Yeah. And as we showed earlier with the other craft, you got to be careful about who your friends are, because we know how that movie ended, right? It didn't end well. Because if you get access to a lot of energy, right? But you haven't cleaned out the channels, they clean out for you. And that's why we talk about freeing yourself from egregores. Egregores being those kind of collective awarenesses. Free yourself from them as much as possible. What happened in that movie, okay? We have some friends who suddenly get all sorts of powers, and at least, a couple of them go nuts. And we've seen that happen with magic. We've seen that happen with magic, and people don't get powers, they just go nuts. What kind of trade-off is that? Wait a minute. Jeez. At least get something out of it. No, you just go bonkers. But when we begin to change ourselves, we often change our environment. And that environment consists of not only thoughts, but relationships to other people. And often those other people will resist the change unconsciously. So we have to be willing to free ourselves from those people, ever so politely and kindly, who would keep us from moving forward on our journey. And they don't keep us, we keep ourselves. That's why you often have to find a way around things. These egregores can be good causes too. Everyone, is trying to save the world and make it a better place. At least so they tell you, until you finally get in there. It's funny how in making the world a better place, the size of their house and the cost of their car goes up considerably. Yeah.
They don't want to give up what they got, they just want.
You give up what you got to make the world a better place. Thank you, Al Gore. Right?
Yeah.
And everyone else. So you look at that and you say, always be careful what you're being told. Pay attention to the effects. What is the actual outcome? Not what you're being told, but what are you actually perceiving? Discrimination is the first thing you need to have on the path. And unfortunately, that is not encouraged. But you need to have discrimination. Discrimination means you have an understanding of what? Cause and effect. If, then. And we're going to come back to that. Don't get caught up in the plans of others, no matter how noble. You can support plans of others, but don't let them entangle you. And entangling is what? It's an emotional feeling. It's a feeling of emotional commitment out of obligation, a negative feeling, rather than something that you want to do. Do it or don't. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, fine. But don't do guilt. Okay? Be generous. Have a good heart. Be tolerant as best you can with the ignorance of others, as long as it's not, having too much of an impact on your life. A direct impact, okay? That means you're open. Because if you're intolerant of others, you're projecting all your Shakti, all your energy out. Think of across the day how often you project all your energy out. And now you want to get that back. And if you had that back, what would happen? How much more you would be able to accomplish with yourself, right? So I say, don't try to convince people of things. Explaining is one thing, but don't ever try to convince. Learn when to walk away. That's one of the greatest problems we have societally today, is people just simply don't know when to walk away. And it's not everyone, but it's just enough of a noisy minority, always trying to convince you of something.
They're all on Facebook.
Yep, they're all trying to convince you.
They're on Facebook trying to convince you.
Great, just walk away. See, that's done. It's okay, look, it's okay.
A lot
Done.
of that's just like sales. They're all sales pitches.
It's all sales
There's
pitches.
egregores.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
The egregore is just a giant sales pitch. That's right. Get this salad shooter, it'll make your life infinitely easier. I'm sure it would.
I was in a meeting once, and I think I heard the the best description of something that would be an egregore, and that is, someone was talking to a VP, and they were saying, when can I do this and be free to make my own decisions to get it done? And the VP said, as soon as you convince me that you would do what I would do in your position, then you'll be free to make decisions.
Yeah,
I thought,
that's perfect.
great example of an egregore.
Because yeah, I just want you to be a cookie cutter of me,
Yeah,
and then you're free to go cookie
then you're
cutter.
free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Be just like me, and you'll be free.
Yeah.
And that is the sales pitch. That is the sales pitch in occultism very often. You see that increasingly with certain groups where they're trying to modify their magical pitch to be, you know, how to be a living god, or how to be, you know, this will make your life perfect. How to be successful in everything you do. And you know, some of it, then even guys like Tony Robbins, there's some really good stuff in the NLP, and we have to give him credit for the way he took what was really an obscure method of hypnosis and made it available to the masses. I mean, I took NLP on a college level. I'll tell you, I mean, it was just dense crap. I mean, it's useful, but it was just dense. Having access to his method, his way of explaining it, clearly, simply, with examples, was tremendous. So he's done very practical. He's done a tremendous help for people who've applied it and used it consistently over time. But the fundamental sales pitch is not that this will make your life better, but the fundamental sales pitch, and it's not just him, it's all these guys, is be like me. Be like me, and you'll be happy. Because if that wasn't the sales pitch, there wouldn't be the constant referencing to my giant seaside house, or all these other wonderful things that he has come to own,
How much he cares about people.
and how much he cares.
He cares so much about people.
I care so much.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. But it's, again, it's just, and we've talked about this often in private, why that sales pitch is necessary. You've got to hook people to get them to do what they need to do to make themselves better. The problem is, in that hooking process, they can get so caught up in process that there's no outcome. And we've talked about that, how that seems to be the new direction of education. Education is getting very much involved in pushing process over content, which means, what's the outcome? Life is outcome oriented.
Or worse yet, not understanding the difference.
And
Not
the-
conscious of the difference.
That's right. When you can't understand the difference, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. So what we have then is you're caught in the egregore. You're caught in the process. You cannot escape the demiurge, if you will.
Right.
We're very much outcome oriented. If this is helping you, good, do it. If this is not helping you, figure out how and why, and change it or do something else. But I want you to achieve your goals. I don't care what those goals are, really. You know, because I'm assuming they're healthy and useful to you and others. Okay? But it's goal oriented. And those goals go back to the four aims. Does this make you healthy? Does this make you happy? You know? Does this make you wealthier? Doesn't have to be, you know, an exuberance of wealth, but I mean, I want you to be able to pay your bills and not worry about those things. You know? I want you to be able to come to seminars when you want to, or at least a few times a year or once a year. And does this make you wise? Does it give you an understanding of that relationship of energy, matter, consciousness that we talked about? Okay? Because in the end, it's all about karma, action, cause and effect. So we want you to free yourself from those things which steal your energy.
And the emphasis on
Yeah.
freedom.
Focus on your becoming, your work, your plan, and then how we harmonize that with nature. Many people have great plans, but they're not in harmony with nature. You know? And you see that just day-to-day stuff. Nature, we don't even have to look at nature in terms of some great cosmology. Just day-to-day stuff. You know? We talk about solar energy, you know, people talking about how it's going to save everything. You know, I just ask simple questions. Okay, what goes into making a solar panel? Where do those resources come from? How much of those resources exist? Therefore, how many solar panels can we produce? And what will be the maximum energy output, at least using today's understanding? And even if we can amplify that, then what is that? And what is that outcome in relation to the total amount of energy consumed?
And the cost of wars to get access to those rare elements that go into it.
Assuming they are not sold or traded freely.
Yes.
That's right. So that's the next step that we add on to that cost. And of course, none of that plan is really, even though it's sold as being in harmony with nature, it's not in harmony with nature. Part of it is, but not all of it. If we say we can use solar energy to supply this amount of energy, and now we got to figure out how to get rid of the other, how to obtain the other 98.5%.
How to go from raw materials to product.
Right.
The whole
And that's it. That's process and outcome oriented.
Yeah.
We're designed. How do we get from an abstract idea all the way to the end goal, the end product that we can point to and say, I did that. I made that widget. Because that's how that tree works. It goes all the way from abstract all the way down to what, Malkuth? Singular concrete stuff. This paper, this tea bag, this cup, these phones, all this stuff. Us. Okay? So we're very outcome oriented. We always say nature is omnipotent, all powerful. Let it be your friend and guide. And I translate that to you as meaning pay attention to the outcomes and adjust accordingly. And then you're going to get what you want.